So now you got a relationship with someone you didn't have before. Do we have folks coming up? Any of my team up here? Do we have some senators? Yeah, Cory Booker. He was talking to somebody too long. Come on up, guys. This is the part, so I did what I was told to do and went to the length of the clock, and so I'm sorry we had this little pause here. But I just want you to know, John, I had everybody just hit the person next to them so that they met someone new.
Did they actually do it?
Yeah, they did, yeah.
That's good. You've learned when not to listen to Steve, which is a very important skill to have. So this is called Calling an Audible. We've got 3 distinguished guests who are going to join us and handsome guests. And because of the Senate vote schedule, we've been able to bring them into one panel from 2. So this is a place and policymaking panel, and why place and policymaking? We've talked about some of this already today, where your zip code has a lot to say about your access to economic opportunity, your ability to achieve the American dream. And some places are really struggling in spite of that headline growth that we're all familiar with and the low unemployment rate. And there's so many good things about the national economy. Often lost in the mix is the story that for millions of Americans, the national stats don't reflect their local reality. And so here are 3 policymakers with us today who understand that and who are leading the charge on issues ranging from the opioid crisis to access to capital, to entrepreneurship, and access to opportunity in places that many others have forgotten. So please help me welcome to the stage Senator Joe Manchin, Senator Cory Booker, and Senator Tim Scott.
And Cory, good to see you. Good to see you. Tim, how are you? Good to see you. Good to see you.
No, you're here.
And he didn't mention this, but Steve Glickman and I are going to do it. Yeah, you guys sit wherever you like to go.
I'm trying to moderate. I'm going to moderate.
Yeah.
I'm going to sit between these 2 Democrats.
So, yeah. So Steve and I are going to play up here. I'm going to play the role of Ed McMahon to your Johnny Carson. So.
Well, first of all, can I just say how great it is that you guys would have the 3 African Americans from the Senate here together on this
exactly.
couch.
Right, Joe.
The three you got the 3 black guys.
So let me frame this. So we were going to.
I'm the minority in West Virginia.
We're grateful that we got these 3 terrific senators to come in, and I just want to issue just a tiny bit of a preamble. When EIG launched in Washington, D.C., as I told earlier, they launched with a paper written by a well-known Republican economic theologian named Kevin Hassett, who's now chairman of the council, and another theologian of the left, Jared Bernstein, who went on to advise President Obama and Vice President Biden. And they said, look, we have an opportunity to correct the deficit of attention and investment in infrastructure in neglected and forgotten communities around the United States. And they did this paper. Next thing I knew, I was invited to moderate a session with Tim Scott, so much more fun than you thought he would be, and Cory Booker.
That was a backhanded comment.
No, really, really great. It was a fantastic discussion. I don't know if you guys remember it, but I do. It was very memorable. And we did this, and this was EIG. And I just want to say, EIG has scored with something that's so important that came part of the tax bill, the opportunity. I was very, very happy when President Trump called Tim to the podium to explain it in his way that would work in any community. So I want to just tip my hat. Joe Manchin, Senator Manchin of West Virginia, everybody wants to know how I was going to vote on Kavanaugh, but I'm not going to say. He did tell me a little while ago. But, I think the broad notion is thinking about what a healthy economy is in these communities. There are states, and I wanted to just put on the table, because we're going to have a multiple, where Joe Manchin has sort of talked about health care, and that when you think about the Supreme Court, when you think about what matters is the future of health care, pre-existing conditions, which I understand 89% of West Virginians have it. So I just want to open up that terrain and ask Steve to kind of launch the first question. But this is why we're here today, is talk about healthy communities in all their dimensions. So, Steve.
That was a great question to lead up to your question.
Yeah.
Really what this is about, and everyone on this panel has a great amount of experience, is what are people feeling in their communities, and what do they see in their politics? and what can the Senate do to bridge a lot of that gap? So let me start with a real quick premise. So some of you may know Sebastian Junger, who wrote a book called Tribe, and the core thesis of that book is at the end of the day, what every American cares about is feeling they're connected to a community, they can make a contribution, and it's meaningful. So where do you guys see the gap right now between what you hear back home from the people that live in your communities, and everyone here has had experience working at the community level, and what they're seeing come out of Washington?
Well, rural America is much different. Rural West Virginia is probably much different than not most for Tim, but for where Cory was basically governing over, if you will, in Newark and in a concentrated area, an urban area. Right now, our biggest concern for us to get competitive is going to be rural broadband and high speed. Get them up to speed, telehealth, all the things that go with it. Healthcare, 6 out of 10 jobs. In rural America, rural West Virginia, rural counties, 6 out of 10 jobs are in some form of healthcare. Wow. It's unbelievable. And the need that we have. So the Affordable Care Act, no matter what you want to call it, it's something that the expansion, first time they got health care, pre-existing condition, 800,000 West Virginians have been diagnosed with pre-existing condition. If the courts do away with the petition from the attorney generals, starting with Texas, if they do away with that constitutionality of that, and insurance companies can go back and play the games they've played before, they can decide the fate of most of West Virginia. Whether they can buy insurance, afford insurance, or they're one illness away from a catastrophic financial ruin. These are the things we deal with as much differently. So we tell people that everybody.
That's President Trump telling me you're busy.
Probably is.
Oh, does it say?
It's no caller. It's usually,
that's the White House, dude. Oh, interesting.
no. Anyway, no. He's
said,
over.
For those in the audience, it said don't answer on it. I don't know what that means. I don't know why you labeled it that way.
He's calling from Europe. He's calling from NATO.
You know, so anytime when they do the formulas on type of, let's say for we did the care on opiate, and West Virginia's been hit hard. We're #1 state as far as in opiate addiction and deaths. We're trying to reverse that, working very hard. These are hard-working jobs, so they get addicted, prescribing. And then we've told people that that we have the money that's going to come down from the care that we pay goes down for population. Well, if you look at us per population, we're not going to get the amount of money that it takes to take care of the fight we have. So I kept saying, we're on the front line of a battle. If you're on the front line of a battle, you don't ration out the shells to everybody that's not on the front line. You make sure that people on the front line have the wherewithals to fight that battle. And that's what we have to continually bring to brunt here in Washington, understanding rural America, and all of my state is rural, is much different than urban America. And we can't let this country be divided on rural and urban boundary lines.
Senator Booker, you're from a much more urban state. When you go back home, is healthcare number 1, 2, 3 like it is for Senator Manchin, or what else are you hearing?
Well, first of all, you know, we live in a country right now where there's common pain, but not a sense of common purpose. And whether you go, and I've traveled, you know, since I've been a senator, I've had the blessings of traveling through most of the states in our country, from Alaska to Alabama, from the great, you know, the Gulf Coast to the Great Lakes. And whether it's urban or suburban, I find the same sense of pain, the same sense of anxiety, the same sense of worry. If you were my parents' generation, if you were a baby boomer in America, 90% of baby boomers did better than their parents. We've now gotten to an America that's whittling down, that it's a coin toss for millennials, about 50-50 chance that you're going to do better than your parents. We have a country that by normal economic indicators, unemployment rate, GDP, people say, oh, we're doing well, but success and wealth and opportunity is not geographically distributed equally. And you have people, whether it's from urban areas or rural areas, who are really working harder than their parents did, but they're falling behind. And we can see that on a lot of objective indices and measures, that people are working harder and harder, and everything seems to be going up, but not their salaries or their quality of their life, whether it's prescription drugs, whether it's cost of college. You can go through all of those things. And so I think we try to divide our country in ways that are not necessary. We all have so much more in common than we do that divides us. And so I am the only senator that lives in an inner city, low-income area. The median income in my neighborhood, according to the last census, was $14,000 per household. On my block, I see the challenges of America, whether it's Shahad Smith, who was killed on my block, the top of the street where I live, with an assault weapon, whether it's the drug treatment center across the street dealing with the opioid epidemic. Yeah. And when I go to the local store, the local bodega people using food stamps who work full-time jobs. And so when you talk about what people have anxiety about in my neighborhood, they have anxiety about all these issues that we talk about in Washington as policy issues. People are worried about, hey, what happened to the American bargain, which I know people feel in West Virginia. That if you work hard, you play by the rules, you can get ahead, you can take care of your family, you can retire with security, and your kids are going to do better than did before. So of course, healthcare devastated. There was one of the top reasons for personal bankruptcy in my state. And you didn't just need to live in inner city Newark, it was affecting people in every county. And so people are looking, what happened to the bargain that was working for my parents that just isn't working when you have over 40% of Americans making $15 or less. And if the minimum wage, when my dad got his first job, kept up with just productivity and inflation, it'd be like $20 an hour now. But there was a time when my grandfather worked in the assembly lines in Detroit during the war where you could support your whole family working an assembly line job, support your family, retire with dignity. And somehow we have to figure out as a country, how are we going to get back to the equal distribution of opportunity? And that's why I'm so proud of the bill that Tim and I did together. This is the first, the conversation's changed in America. I'm having dialogue just because of one piece of legislation that he and I wrote and then were able to get on this tax bill. People suddenly are saying, wait a minute, how can we figure out ways to make investment equal? You said this to me, which I thought was amazing, that they've now found out, because 3 metropolitan areas have over 80% of the VC dollar investment. 3 metropolitan areas. And I know genius is equally distributed in the United States, okay? But somehow they found out that even if you just have a direct connection, an airline connection, the places that have a direct airline connection from San Francisco, those communities will see more VC dollars, more investment in those areas. And this has nothing to do about anything but the ease and convenience, and not an understanding that the best emerging market on the planet Earth is not Thailand. It is right here in the United States of America. And we've got to start figuring out ways and mechanisms to recognize that equal pain, to unite in a sense of common purpose, and address the hurt of our country. If not, we're going to see extreme philosophies get far more currency than they should in a country that needs to get back to doing what we did when we saw our economies expanding and creating the biggest expansion in middle class on the planet Earth and all of humanity. China's passing us by now. India's passing us by now. We need to get back to the things that were working in my parents' generation, which we've fallen away from now.
Senator Scott, if we had been here a year and a half ago, I was so taken then with the opportunity zones and so impressed with your vision. I wouldn't have given you much chance of success of getting it through. You and Cory Booker, you did that, and so
if you met Tim when he was in the Grace, you wouldn't have given him much chance
of
success
no, I mean,
either.
I sensed his passion and sort of how you thought this worked, but the idea that in this environment you would do it. So my expectations have been raised, and so I'm interested in what's your second act, what's your next thing. Sure. Now you've done opportunity zones, but as you look at a healthier economy, greater stakeholders, dealing with some of the issues of inequality or those left behind, what's the thing you want to add on after? What's the EIG next project?
Yeah, I think the what is important, the why is more important.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we focus so much on the what, we forget about the why, and if you don't understand the why, you can't get to the how.
Yeah.
So the why is critical, and for me, the why is, I applaud Cory for making the decision to move into a place where he didn't have to live. That place he moved into is a place where I was born and raised. I was born and raised in poverty, born and raised in a single parent household, born and raised in a place where educational outcomes had low expectations. And frankly, as you've heard my story before, and I'm sure I shared it the last time we were on stage, being mired in poverty, living down to low expectations, having an education system that does not serve my greater good. As that kid who was not doing well, looking for direction, flunking out of high school as a freshman, I think I'm the first United States Senator to fail civics, the study of politics. I will say after 5 years in the Senate, I feel like I'm not the only one failing civics in the United States Senate. So looking for solutions that actually meet where people are living requires spending quality time with them. The opportunity zones, while EIG worked on it heavily and brought the two of us together, Cory and myself together, getting it into the Finance Committee, getting it onto the tax bill, which was such a partisan fight to get it passed, will produce results that are incredible. I think today's economy reflects that great things are still possible in this country. A 3.8% unemployment rate, 213,000 jobs last month, 223,000 jobs before that, 45-year high in small business optimism. The question is, how do we make sure that all the good news translates into places where the recovery has been so uneven? Places like North Charleston, where our violent crime rates are as higher than New York City. I live a mile away from a place where we too often have a murder too many weekends of the year. The way that we bring those back for the next act is to make sure that we crystallize the importance of these opportunity zones and that we bring back to these communities private sector capital. The government has been there trying to do good work, and we've seen that war on poverty for the last 50 years. Sometimes you look over the last 50 years and you wonder if you had a war on poverty or a war on poor people. I think we should have a war on poverty, not on poor people. The way that you make sure that you delineate the difference is you take the government good that we're trying to do and you harmonize that with private sector capital. That is the key to creating jobs in those neighborhoods, and that the second iteration of opportunity zones should be quality education, whether it's public charter schools, along with workforce development, because in too many of those communities where I'm from 16, 17 years old to 25, the unemployment rate, especially for African Americans, are over 50%. When I'm walking in the neighborhoods, when I'm talking with the folks, what I hear people thirsty for is hope. And what they see in Washington is chaos. We should do better for those folks who cannot speak for themselves. There's an old proverb that says, stand up for those who cannot stand up for themselves.
Before I jump to Steve, let me ask Joe one. Thank you for that. Joe, I often ask legislators like yourselves, and I've asked this of Cory and Tim in the past, what's on your dashboard? As you look at your dashboard and you've got 3 needles you're going to move to try to help us understand how West Virginia can become a healthier economy, a healthier place, a place that is not struggling as much. And what would those be? I mean, you've got a chance right now to tell these folks here, what would be the things we could move collectively that aren't moving today that should?
Let me give you an example. My state, first of all, I'm in the location, everything's location, location, location. I'm within 500 miles of 2/3 of the population. There's no reason we shouldn't be the successive model of the country. Our state was born out of the Civil War. So our state was pilfered, if you will, out of the Civil War by everybody seeing all the rich resources that we had and came down and owned it. So we have a lot of absentee ownership in my state. So it never had people living and investing right back into the state, taking money out, never putting back in. That went on for years and years and years and years, trying to correct it. You have a situation now to where they had an energy shift, okay, with fossil fuel. Our little state did the heavy lifting. We mined the coal, built the factories, made the steel, built the factories, built the guns and ships. We did everything. We did all the heavy lifting. And now coming into the 21st century, we were treated like the returning Vietnam veteran. You did all the heavy lifting, made all the sacrifices for our country, did exactly what they've asked us to do. Now they don't like it anymore. Kicked us and left us for the side of the road. And I told them, I said, if you're going to do tax credits, you're going to change the energy shift. And basically, shouldn't the tax credits follow the areas of employment that took the hardest hit? So if our fossil energy is taking the hardest hit, don't you think these people with all these skills can make you the best windmills or the best solar panels in the world? Give us a chance. But if you don't force it, so we never had a chance. And people from the political arena said, how does your state flip? We've always been a Democrat state. We were a Republican state until 1932. The Great Depression put everybody in starvation. FDR comes along, he's a salvation. We become a conservative Democrat state for the next 83 years. Under the loyalty for FDR and the opportunities he gave our grandparents, and all of us stayed loyal. And as soon as it looked like the Democrats switched against everything that we've done and all the heavy lifting and left the working person behind, then the politics switched. Well, we're still the same whether you're Democrat or Republican, we're still good, solid, hardworking people. We don't have those opportunities, so our infrastructure is not where it should be to give us the opportunities. If you look at southern West, I have 10 counties that are really struggling because they're all built around extraction. They need highways. They need broadband high speed. People talk about we're going to have this and that, and they're talking about computer literacy and this and that. I said, wait a minute, you have to have computer connectivity to have literacy or non-literacy. We don't even have that. A lot of people don't even have cell service because of the terrain that we live in. We're beautiful, and so you take advantage. So we do more tourism. We could do an awful lot of things. We're to the point now we're looking, how can we get kids through an education system that aren't going to go on and be successful in a college degree, have no intentions, get them an associate degree coming out of high school, have dual roles coming through high school, getting an associate degree to come out work ready. That's what we think is going to be our skill. We'll give you the craftsmen, we'll give you the plumbers and the carpenters, we'll give you all the people that basically no one seems to be doing anymore, or not wanting to do because we're not training in those areas. So we got a lot to do here, but our little state it's a wonderful state, and the people are just so dedicated and hardworking. They've had hard times, and we need a little bit of a help. Appalachian Regional Commission is built for that, and we just need to do more and make sure it stays into being. My good friend here, I need your help.
Are you closer to Tim Scott or Cory Booker?
I love them both.
Okay, good.
You mean ideologically, or?
Cory keeps me, they both keep me centered. If you start tilting a little bit right, and then Cory Booker will knock you back. If you tilt a little bit, if you tilt a little bit left, then Tim knocks you back. So I end up right here. I should be sitting between them.
I want to ask all three of you a tough question, but one I think is really honest, which is, if you really look at 2016, at the end of the day, it was essentially a rejection of both the Democrat and the Republican Party as we know it. And it was a rejection because people felt like they weren't being listened to. And so as we run up to 2020, what does the new face, the new vision of the Democratic and Republican Party look like to win back voters? Not win back voters to Republican or Democratic circles, but win back voters who buy the trust of their institutions again. And you three have the honor of serving in the greatest institution in the United States. What does it take? And I'm not suggesting any of you are necessarily going to run for president in 2020. I'm just saying in 2020, what does it look like?
I'm not running for president, I'm running from the president. But go ahead. After you.
Is there a Booker and Scott ticket?
Let's start the moderate then. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Joe, you're back up. You got to answer this question about what.
Well, from the Democrat, here's the thing. When you're out of work, you don't care whether you're Democrat or Republican. You just want a job. You want to provide for your family, okay? And whoever's in power and doesn't provide that opportunity, they're going to look for somebody else. Both failed. When you have a non-traditional candidate such as Donald Trump being able to rise to 15, a field of 15 on your side, and be able to come through that, people were saying something. Listen, I said, man, I think it's telling you what the American electorate, they were just teed off on all of us. They just wanted a change. We want to secure borders, but we want to have compassion. I tell people, I says, I'm fiscally responsible and socially compassionate. I think most Americans are fiscally responsible and socially compassionate. That's how you live your life. You wouldn't be here today if you didn't. How do we get so far out of the kilter? So I'll never forget, Elizabeth Warren asked me after 2016, she said, Joe, what happened to the West Virginia Democrats? I said, not a thing. They want to know what happened to the Washington Democrats. They want to know what happened to the Washington Democrats. And I told Elizabeth this. I said, Elizabeth, we always believed that the West Virginia Democrats always believed that we'd always help the working poor, help somebody that was down and out, pick them up. We didn't want to carry them forever. My dad says, hell, your mom only carried you for 9 months. How long do you want me to carry you for? So that was the work ethic that was built into us. So with that being said, I said, Elizabeth, now the West Virginia Democrat left the National Democrat, voted Republican because they believed the Washington Democrats prevented them from working. Didn't create opportunities, but made it harder for them. That's all we're looking for, is finding that balance. I don't care who finds it. I don't care. People are so fed up with both parties, they're looking for something different. And 2020 will be no different.
Yeah, I guess I'll hop in as a Republican and we'll go back to the Democrat, Republican, Democrat.
American.
These are good odds. It's good.
Yeah.
I know. For me, I think what you'll hear in 2020 is similar to what you've heard in the past, to be honest with you. Underlying all of the rhetoric that some of us are tired of and some of us are not, the fact of the matter is that the underlying policy, I think, is heading in the right direction as it relates to our economics. The truth of the matter is that 3.8% unemployment rate, as I said earlier, is hard to argue with. We should find ways to get the long-term unemployed back into the workforce, which I think will help our labor force participation rate go beyond the 62.7% where it is today. But from a marketing standpoint, the economic successes this country is having is easy to sell. We're gonna have to get the trade conversation right between now and the end of this year in order for that to be able to have a sustained path forward. Second thing that we're gonna do, I hope, is we're gonna have a sincere yet sensitive and compassionate conversation about those folks who are left out. One of the things I'm pushing the party to take a second look at is how do we market to folks who have been carved out of opportunity for far too long? The opportunity zones is one of the ways that we do that. Education is another way that we do that. Workforce development is another important part of that. Those three pillars will lead to a sustained success. A good economy makes a lot of things possible, but not all things. You think about what Alexis de Tocqueville said back in the 1830s, 40s. The greatness of America is not found in just good economic policy, not found in the institutions of government. It's the core conviction that who we are as an American people. We are an exceptional people because we are a good people. That's what makes us great. And so at the core, I think 2020 will be about whether or not we see the future optimistically, and can we show the core principles that lead to that greatness, which is really defined by significance.
Senator.
So to me, this is not complicated, and it's definitely not partisan. And I'm not looking for having a Democratic message. I'm looking to speak to Americans, and I think we should be talking to Americans and stop dividing people up by party in this country. We hate each other so much. It's a tribalism. You could take one policy idea and say it's a Republican idea. Immediately, Democrats hate it. You can take a policy idea and say it's a Democratic idea, same policy idea, and Republicans hate it. I mean, damn, I crossed the Senate floor to hug John McCain after he got a cancer diagnosis, and I get beat up on Twitter by people on my own party. When Chris Christie hugs Barack Obama after a disaster in our state, standing there at Air Force One, people lost lives, people lost their property. The two men come down, they have a hug. I'm a hugger. It wasn't even a good hug, for crying out loud. and on the Republican primary stage, Republicans more than once pillory him for touching the President of the United States. This is where we've come to in our nation, and it's outrageous. And if you think about just indices, when I was mayor of a city, it was a nonpartisan city, I ran for mayor, I had this saying, I said, God we trust, but everybody else bring me data. Let me just show you the numbers. Now, there's an organization called the World Economic Forum that keeps data on the competitiveness of democracies, because everybody up here on the stage wants more economic opportunity in our country. And all those metrics, 40 years ago in my dad's generation, we were number one in every metric of competitiveness. So what are those metrics? Well, if you're running a business, you need to have a good physical plant, you need to have qualified employees, you need to be staying ahead of the competition. Same thing with the country. We used to be the best in all those things. The best infrastructure on the planet Earth, that's your physical plant. The best infrastructure on the planet Earth. Now the trains running on the Northeast Corridor run half an hour slower than they did in the 1960s. While other countries are killing us, even investing in their infrastructure, they invest more of their percentage of GDP than we do. We're falling way behind, and it's killing productivity in my region. The greater New York City, or I call it the greater Newark region, is choking out productivity because we haven't invested in infrastructure like other countries did. What's staying ahead of the competition? We were the #1 R&D intensive economy on the planet Earth, public-private R&D. We sailed ourselves into job creation. If you hold out your smartphone, the GPS, the battery life, the touchscreen, all because of our collective investment in R&D. Now where are we as a country? We're getting beat. We're no longer the top infrastructure, top R&D country. You think China is sitting around thinking they're going to beat us tank for tank or warship for warship? They're saying, no way, we're going to beat them in green tech, we're going to beat them in biotech, we're going to beat them in machine learning. What's the quality of your employees? Education. We were the best educating planet on the country on the planet Earth. Now in every indice, from early childhood all the way to percentage of your population graduating from college. And other countries are lowering barriers to education, we're raising them. 0 to 4% of median income to go to higher education in Germany, 52% of median income here. This is outrageous that we have let our competitors pass us in the indices that matter. And so you want to know what the message should be? First, let's just stop doing stupid stuff. I mean, really, this stupid stuff that we're doing. Let me give you an example. while they were building out infrastructure, ports, bridges, roads, the only area we beat the planet Earth in building out infrastructure between the time I was in law school, the time I was in college, we were building a new prison every 10 days.
Right.
Every 10 days to do what? 1 out of every 3 incarcerated women on the planet Earth is right here in the United States of America.
Right.
And we put hurt people in prison. People who are addicted to drugs, people who have been traumatized. 86% of women who are incarcerated have been raped, victims of sexual trauma. We torture children in prison. I'm not exaggerating that. Human rights groups say when you put a child in solitary confinement, by the way, there are thousands of kids right now in solitary confinement who haven't even been convicted of anything because they can't afford to get a lawyer, so they sit in prison until their court date. We have to do stupid things that are hurting people. You know what our bad infrastructure is? I partnered with the other West Virginia senator on just saying, God bless America. We're not investing in our water infrastructure. People talk about Flint, Michigan as if it's some anomaly. There are 1,000 jurisdictions right now in the United States where children have twice the blood lead levels in Flint, Michigan. We want to think kids need to be educated? If your mind is addled with lead, it is a lifetime condition. In fact, it causes more criminality because it suppresses your executive function. We are doing things that are just dumb, and you pay more on the back end of these problems than making smart investments on the front end. And so you think there's distance between Tim and I? Yeah, you know, fine, we might have different issues, but my first bill in the United States Senate was with Tim to do what? Invest in apprenticeship programs. Why? Because again, I was a mayor. I used to look what other cities were doing. I look what other countries are doing right now. My father used to tease me. He goes, boy, you got more degrees in the month of July, but you ain't hot. I've got a degree in sociology, a degree in political science, a degree in history. The only thing I'm qualified to do in a 21st century economy is be a United States Senator. When I asked all the manufacturers in my city, what's your pain point? I thought they were going to complain to me about taxes. You know what their complaint was? They couldn't find machinists. They couldn't find people with the skills. So what's Germany doing? Half their people now, don't go to college. Right. We make people feel bad in America if they don't have an art history degree from some fancy college. When what you really need in this economy is know how to computer program, know how to be a healthcare professional, things that don't need college. This isn't complicated, folks. Our grandparents showed us how to build a great economy. They were out training this generation of Americans. They were out investing in infrastructure than this generation of Americans. They were out R&Ding this generation of Americans. We need to stop the bullshit partisanship in this country. We really do. We have more common ground. We have more common ground than we care to admit. And we're letting political opportunists on both sides of the aisle try to undermine the truth of this nation, that the ties that bind us are so much stronger than the lines that divide us. We need Americans right now more than ever before, and we need to see folks that are being rendered invisible. From rural towns to urban towns, we need to make sure that we see Americans and understand that our most valuable natural resource in this country, and he just said it in different words, the most valuable natural resource in this country is not oil, gas, or coal. It is the genius of the next generation of children that are coming, and we need to be investing in them again.
Thank you. Joe has a quick zinger. Thank you, Cory. Joe wanted to add something real quick.
I just have one thing to cap off on is my grandfather. I think of my grandfather, Papa Joe, all the time. But Papa had a saying. He said, Joe, let me tell you one thing. Unmanaged debt will make cowardly decisions that you will make in your life. Unmanaged debt. What I'm saying about that, no one said a word. None one of us has spoken about the debt of the nation. The climbing, rising debt of the nation. I first got here, I was on Armed Services Committee, and Mike Mullen was chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I'm thinking all the different threats we have. I says, Mike, what's the greatest threat we face in America? I'm thinking what country he's going to name. Afghanistan war was going, Iraq war, all this was going. He never hesitated, never skipped a beat. He said the debt of the nation will be the downfall of this nation. If we don't take that serious enough to start getting a handle on this debt, then God forsake, and God help the next generations coming on. We've got to have a control of our finances. If not, it's going to have runaway inflation. I'm concerned about that, and nobody's talking about it because it's not sexy.
We did today. Alice Rivlin was here. It was a big topic, so we're on it with you. I just want to say, just in conclusion, I'm sure Steve will agree with me, that one of the things we were very committed to in bringing particularly Senator Scott and Senator Booker together and adding Senator Manchin is to show that actually there are many stories out there of senators working across the lines on these important issues than the media, and I'm part of the media at the Atlantic that we report about. And I just want to first say thank you for making the time, because I know this was a hellish day for all of you. But I do think these stories are problem